Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 2010 Ford F-250 King Ranch. Up front is a 6.4 liter turbo diesel V8, and down below is a 6-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this F-250 King Ranch for two reasons. First of all, King Ranch might be one of my favorite sub-brands out of any sub-brand on the market. The King Ranch comes with pretty much everything, and we're going to be diving into that here today because this is a lot more luxury than what you might expect out of a Super Duty. The second reason is the fact that this has the 6.4 liter turbo diesel V8, which was actually not a very good engine, and so we'll be diving into that here today, why diesel engines changed so much throughout the 2000s, and why this is the epitome of that. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 6.4 liter diesel V8. Well, as I mentioned, it is a twin turbo diesel V8, and it replaced the outgoing 6.0 liter diesel that Ford had used throughout the mid-2000s. That engine, the 6.0, was nicknamed the 6 Blow because it had a fair amount of issues. However, the 6.4 liter might have stolen the cake for that with even more issues. Almost every model year has some type of different issue, and when I say do your own research, there are plenty of people online that have said that their 6.4 liter has been unreliable, but there's also an equal amount of people that say that it's been fine and that it has been reliable. So you can formulate your own opinion, but this definitely had more issues than the 7.3 liter that was in the 1990s, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. What I can tell you is that it drives very, very nice. Diesels of the 90s, you had to poke and prod to get them to drive like a normal car. They felt lopey and lazy. Although they could pull the world down with a string, they were very luggy around town. And by the 2010s, that pretty much went away. This drives like a big car. You can actually accelerate in a reasonable manner. And so the experience that I'm having at hand, it's actually pretty wonderful. It's just what's underlying or waiting for me down the road that might be a little bit intimidating, and we'll talk more about that with the final thoughts. Like I said, bear to it is a 6-speed automatic. They did not sell these with the manual transmission, so your only option there. And last but not least, this particular Super Duty is 4-wheel drive. We'll talk about how to select that with the interior portion. So, as I mentioned, how does it feel to drive the F-250? It drives great. It drives like a modern diesel should, even though this is 15 years old. Acceleration is good, ride quality is good. The King Ranches have always had pretty good ride quality, and visibility is decent. Although this is a very large vehicle and you will rely on your giant mirrors quite a bit, it still rides really, really nice, drives nice, and I like the experience. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 6 gauges. Off to the left is my tachometer. I giggle because it only goes up to 5. Up in the center, we have our turbo pressure, coolant temperature, transmission temperature, and fuel. And off to the right, we have our speedometer. We also do get that little information gauge down in the center. On the steering wheel, on the left, we do have our cruise control. And off to the right, we have our media, skip track, and volume buttons. To the left of me, we do have a giant climate control vent, headlight switch, and gauge dimmer switch. And moving on to the door, we have our power mirror options as well as our power folding options. And a little bit down below that, we have the power windows and power locks. Moving back into the center, we get more climate control vents and the radio. This is very clearly outdated. This is definitely showing its age of 15 years old, but that could easily be swapped out if you wanted to. Down below, we do have the climate controls, very typical Ford of this era, these sort of half circles for temperature adjustment, fan speed, and heated seats. Very nice to get heated seats in a Super Duty. And then off to the left, we have our 4-wheel drive select. So 2-wheel drive, 4 high, and 4 low. The bottom row of buttons, we do have our pedal adjustments, as well as a 12-volt outlet, our trailer brake adjustments, coin holder, and our aux input for the Ford Sync system sitting down below another 12-volt outlet. Then we do have pop-out cup holders, so we will do a big friggin' bottle test. And not only does it pass here with the fold-out cup holders, if you move up to the center console, it also has bigger cup holders that also fit. Now, the bottle is a little bit loose there, so I'm not sure if I would have given it a pass for these alone, but it passes with the fold-out. So overall, the F-250 King Ranch from 2010 passes the big friggin' bottle test. Moving on to the center console, we get a giant center console, and this is the first part of the interior where you'll notice the saddle leather interior. Now, the seats are also finished in saddle leather. They say King Ranch on them, and this is all named after the largest ranch in Texas. It's known as the King Ranch, and I'll put up its acreage on the screen as well as a map of just the King Ranch. It's enormous. It's like a chunk of Texas. So that's where this interior and trim level gets its name, and this is all saddle leather like you would find out on the farm. Now, what's interesting is that this has some wear and tear to it. And this might be the first interior of the 17 or 1800 cars that I've been in where as the interior wears, I think it actually starts to look better. This actually starts to look more cowboy, more ranch hand, as the interior starts to age and wear. I feel like this is now actually saddle leather, where when it rolled off the factory floor, it kind of mimicked what saddle leather looked like. But all the movies we see with the cowboys and the gunslingers, well, their saddlebags and saddles and coats look like this. So it actually looks cooler to me now that it's been worn out a little bit. And that is something very, very special. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2010 King Ranch F-250, and this is huge. Trucks 10 years before this, in the late 90s, early 2000s, did not have back seats this big. I don't exactly know when. Maybe it was the start of this generation in 2008, but this is absolutely massive. Put a curtain up, and I'm in my own hotel room apart from the driver and passenger. This is a fully livable amount of space, and I love that. The saddle leather carries on back here. Love to see that. It says King Ranch on the seats. We also have pockets on the backs of the front seats that say King Ranch, 12-volt outlet, 2 cup holders, and we have cup holders that fold down. This is an immensely impressive back seat, and you will not struggle for room. This is a better back seat. Genuinely, I know I always bring this up, but it was a big moment in my life. This has a nicer back seat in terms of space than the Rolls-Royce that I have reviewed. And I've done 2. Hopefully a 3rd by the time this video comes out. So this is nice. This is peak luxury in terms of space. And with the sunroof, luxury to me is defined by light and space. I have plenty of light. I have plenty of space. I am luxurious. Or in a luxurious environment, I will say. I still microwave hot dogs, so I don't think I'm personally luxurious, but we'll leave that for another time. Let's hop into the very back. We'll take a quick look at the bed and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. Right around the back of the F-250 Super Duty King Ranch, however names you want to assign to it, you can. We do have parking sensors in the rear bumper, which is really nice, but we do have a handle here. Bring it down, and we do have the pole that comes up and the step that comes down, so you can step up into the bed of your F-250 with ease. So this is a locked in place pole, so you can use it to help yourself up. Beyond that, we don't have anything too crazy. This truck in a previous life did have a 5th wheel. However, the previous owner must have removed it before they sold it because it was not included in the deal. So there it is. That is the straightforward bed. You get some tie downs, but you don't have LED lights or speakers or a coffee maker like you see in new trucks. So very, very basic in that regard, and I think it's basic in the right areas. So very, very cool. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I really like this generation of the F-250, of the Super Duty. This was not long after the era where they split the F-150s and lighter duty trucks and the Super Duty, so this looks different than a 2010 F-150. F-250, and I like it. I think it looks strong, I think it looks confident, and it looks very trucky without being like overly blingy. Like, it doesn't have a bedazzled front grille. Although the grille is big, the whole truck is big, so it kind of looks proportionate. But with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving this F-250 King Ranch? Well, I like it a lot. Driving this F-250 has been absolutely wonderful. It has a nice ride. It has all these fantastic features. It has more power than I personally would ever need, and I enjoy it as a truck. This is a good experience. However, under that hood is not a great experience. So let me tell you why. In the 2000s, there was a emissions crackdown on diesel engines. Basically, diesels in the 90s and 80s had free reign of doing kind of whatever they wanted. They were nearly unregulated. There were regulations, but come on, it was a slap on the wrist, if anything. So in the 2000s, the government started to actually crack down on diesels. In 2004, they introduced new EPA standards for the diesel engines, stricter emissions requirements, so that killed the 7.3 liter that Ford was using. It was such a wonderful engine, they had to swap for then the 6 liter that would run cleaner, but had its own basket of cat issues. Then in 2006, there was the ultra-low sulfur diesel mandate, meaning diesel fuel had to contain a lot less and a lot lower sulfur numbers. That's why you'll see on the gauge cluster it says ultra low sulfur diesel only. That's because you could still get sulfur-rich diesel at the time. So it was like when cars used to have to say, hey, unleaded only, don't put leaded fuel in this. That is such a problem of yesteryear, but for diesels, it wasn't that long ago. And then in 2007, the diesel particulate filter was required. This added complexity to the engines yet again. And then in 2010, the government introduced the DEF requirement, or diesel exhaust fluid. It's this blue fluid that basically cleans up the exhaust of a diesel engine. Now, one of these standards probably wouldn't have changed diesel engines all that much. But in a short few years, manufacturers had to pile on all of this emissions equipment. They had to change how their engines drove in a decade. And a decade might seem like a long time, sure. But in reality, in research and design, that's a minute and a half. And so what ended up happening was a lot of diesel engines throughout the late 2000s lost their reliability. They lost what made them so good because they had to conform to these strict rules. And that's the story here with the 6.4 liter. Although it still made good power and they put this out on the market and people didn't really notice that much of a difference, look under the hood. Look at how constrained, look at how jammed in that engine is. It looks like me in a turtleneck sweater, uncomfortable and way too bulbous. And so the 6.4 liter had its fair set of issues. It had DPF clogging issues, oil cooler failures, weaker pistons, coolant leaks, oil contamination, as well as up pipe cracking. It had so many problems, in fact, that the relationship between Ford and Navistar, who helped design the engine, was ended after this engine. And this was only in production from 2008 until 2010, a very, very short run. But Ford couldn't have sold trucks without a diesel option for 3 years while the technology was catching up to the new emission standards. So they had to use it. They were between a rock and a hard place. And now I've had an F-350 turbo diesel for an extended amount of time. I absolutely adored that truck. It made 1,000 pound-feet of torque, which is almost 400 more than this truck in just a touch over 10 years. The technology just hadn't caught up to the mandates yet. And so this truck is kind of stuck in the middle, while everything else about it is wonderful. Unfortunately, this truck was just caught in the crossfire. It didn't do anything wrong. It was just an unintended victim of the era, of the changing administrations and rules. That's what happened. But here it is. Here is an F-250 King Ranch from 2010. A truck I would love to own, but not foot the bill. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Owen for letting me borrow his F-250 for today's video. Owen has been absolutely wonderful to work with. I really, really appreciate him offering this truck up and letting me get behind the wheel. And I look forward to maybe working again together in the future. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.